Hi, this is the first showcase I've made, so apologies for the scuff. I'll be going over Cassandra Nova, how I use her, and like what I like about her. Basically, she's a nice option as another mutant attacker. I don't know if I would say she's better than like Onslaught or Jean. Even Deadpool X-Force is a stronger option, frankly, but Cassandra's a lot of fun, and it's not like she does poorly. The sig that you would want, at least in Awakening, is enough, so a sig 20 Cassandra would be still performing well and competitively against skill defenders such as Nick Fury and Yelena, and sig 80 to 100 would be nice to have if you're taking non-skill matchups, since the sig directly correlates with your damage. Now, the stat focuses. Defender stat focus, she's not really much of a defender. Her primary annoyances are just unique animations and stunning you for attacking her while she's charging a heavy. So I would just run either resistance. You're not really blocking much against her as well, so block penetration is not really ideal. Now for attacker stat focus, I personally run crit rating because her specials do quite a fair bit of damage when they crit, so I want that to happen as often as possible. You could also be running block proficiency since her playstyle involves a fair bit of blocking at the start. Or you can run special damage. That special damage would be less of a benefit than something like crit damage or crit rate, personally, since a fair bit of half of her damage is neuroshocks and the other half is special hits, really. And then you have your resistances. I wouldn't really run a resistance. It doesn't necessarily help her in her matchups. Moving on to the relics, I would say that for Cassandra, the best relic to have would be something like a Domino relic, because the energy penetration would help you deal with the energy resistances of a lot of defenders. Just makes it nice. And a secondary stat focus of crit damage, once again, makes her hit harder. I personally have my Magneto relic on her for the extra block proficiency, which is nice, and a little bit of extra special damage. Now, let's move on to some gameplay. Alright, before I get into some actual rotations and gameplay, I just wanted to show off some important tech. So, with Cassandra, while you're charging your heavy, if they attack you, they get passively stunned. Now, typically, people will just heavy charge in the air, but if they have a bar of power, you kind of risk them throwing a special into you, and you will not passively stun them, so it will cause you to get hit. So instead, what I like to do is, while I'm holding my block, I'll begin to use my right hand to charge my heavy. So when they dash into me, I can let go of my block and I'll immediately begin to charge my heavy. So, pushing away Winter Soldier while I use a bar, I'm going to hold my block. As he's dashing in, I can just let go of my thumb and passively stun him. Shout out to my friend Puppy, who recorded his hands showing off the tech. He's using Lumitrix here, who does the same thing as Cass, where he passively stuns if struck while charging heavy. So, it'll take a minute to get used to, but it's good to know. Now into some rotations. I like to start most fights with my passive stun into a parry heavy to get to 12 Daunted. Then I'll either do combos or more heavies to stack Daunted. Typically I like to build to 1.9 bars, then do special ones back to back, and after every special, make sure you don't do anything in order to stop them from using their special. Additionally, you want to be charging your heavy into a special. That way you stack Daunteds while the special is going on. I also like to do that 2 hits into special 1 instead of just the 1 to stack an extra Euro Shock. As you can see, I just stall after every special, not just standing there, and the AI can only special. Now, this was the multiple special 1 rotation. I'm also going to show off the special 2 rotation. Typically, I don't go for this unless I am taking a gamble, but against skill champs, you could go faster if you choose to go straight to a special 2 and it crits. I'm using some synergies here to increase my crit rating as well, just to demonstrate like what would happen if you get lucky. There, once you get to 25 Daunted, you don't need to charge your heavy any longer, and yeah, this rotation is a couple seconds faster. Now for some real Battlegrounds gameplay. Here we have a Yelena. Instead of the passive stun, I just do a normal parry heavy, because Yelena will give you more Daunted for consuming her combo. So with 3 heavies, shot off quick, I'm already at 25 Daunted. Now I'll just go for the special 1 rotation to be safe. Do note that I do take a lot of crit damage at the block. Typically, I get a bit luckier and end on higher health. And after this, I'll be showing a second Yelena, where I go faster but lose a bit more health. Still ends up in a higher score though. Now, just to preface the current Battlegrounds meta, there are some boosts to Cassandra's damage. So in a slower meta, or in a meta without all these extra attack bonuses from the Prowess or the Saga champ Fury, she might be slightly slower, but for these skill champs at least, she's going to be around the same speed. Here, watch as I just push into her 3 bars and just rip that other special 1, and she's dead. Next, onto Nick Fury. This is just showing her ability to shut down Second Life. Pretty much any regen he gets is just denied, and this one's closer to the rotations I showed off from Winter Soldier, where I go for the passive stun at the start. I'm just building myself up to a bar. Something nice is that fear. If Nick Fury was unblockable, well, you wouldn't get it. And that fear will come in handy later. I believe after going for this next special 1, Nick Fury just dies there. Next, we have Attuma, which doesn't go the most perfect it can be, since I do eat a hit, as you'll see, but this shows off her ability to constantly passive stun, because every time Attuma, or every time the defender purifies her stun, she'll get her passive stun back. Now, I did start this fight off with 4 lights because her first medium is non-contact, and since Attuma is kind of squishy, I just preferred to get more power. Yeah, after this, something to watch out is that sometimes the defender's heavies will clip you there. It was mostly on me, but sometimes it's tough to deal with. we got Killmonger here. Killmonger punishes contact attacks and doesn't really let you crit at all. But it's all good for Cass. She's got plenty of damage to power through it. And considering her only contact attack is that first medium, she doesn't really take much reverb damage. And the tiny damage that you do take is offset by the regens. However, here I will push myself to a special 2 by accident. There, I don't get punished for hitting his counter punch, but it's whatever. But in the special 2 here, it does okay damage even with no crits. And rather than letting the Neros take out, since I was too close and afraid of getting heavied, I just chose to go for some light attacks. Finally, we have this Mr. Knight. Mr. Knight doesn't really have many abilities as a defender, especially if you don't have any debuffs for him to fail. This is more of just a fun little showcase of her nuking and displaying that if it's a throw round, she's not going to be like extremely slow to the point that she'd lose you on those rounds. She is still a decent attacker at her core. And that is Mr. Knight down. Next up, we'll be moving on to some mutant defenders, starting with this Sinister. Sinister heals back crit damage, but Cassandra gets by despite that, and she's got some fair near shock damage. Now for this matchup, it is going faster than one typically would, considering I have a bunch of prowess stacked up, but it works out. Here I do the intercept trick with the 2 special or 2 heavy hits to get a second air shock, and good to see every defender just spam their heavies while rooted. Here I do get myself rooted on accident by the node, but fortunately things go alright. Next up we have Jean, who's very tanky. This isn't the fastest of fights, but just shows her versatility. This matchup is typically not the best of her matchup spread, however, because the reduced combat power rate does get in the way. Now note here that Cassandra is not reverse controls immune, she is only tagged with psychic shielding, so she won't get reversed by onslaught, but you still need to worry about it against Jean. I believe here, since Jean is tankier, I choose to do a heavy to refresh. Now, typically I don't enjoy doing that heavy refresh because it can get risky if they break out a route earlier than expected, but it works out in this case. I also like to do that heavy into special 1 stand-up intercept, just because if it hits their block, it doesn't really matter, they get rooted in place and they won't punish you most of the time. Now onto some science defenders, which she does shockingly well. Here with Spiderwoman, I do get a tad bit lucky with her not evading much, but it's alright, since Cassandra's stuns aren't affected by duration reductions such as limber or endurance. She can fit in a fair amount of basic hits before they had the risk of being evaded. Additionally, this special one just allows you to push with the special 2 more often, avoiding that annoying special 1, and her long special 1 animations make it easy to avoid the fumble timer. There, I'm lucky she didn't evade any part of my 5-hit combo, and special 1 closes it out. Here we have a Photon. Cassandra is a pretty good option for Photon since her long stuns wait out the entire untouchable, and halfway into the fight when you start placing Neuroshocks, you counter the untouchable anyhow because you can't miss. There I do a couple of basics in order to push her to a special 1 with the heavy, bait it out quicker. Here I have no problem attacking to miss because of the Neuroshocks. And once I throw down this first special 1, fight is typically closed out, assuming you don't get terribly unlucky. And this will be a common theme with most Cassandra fights, in which you just spam a bunch of special 1s consecutively and they die without being able to do anything. Next one here is a pretty tricky one, high evolutionary. You still have to play around his alternating combos, so it is tougher to stack up Neuroshocks, and as a result I choose to go for a special 2 in this scenario, which ends up working out. And something to know about high evolutionary is that when you punish his special, your first hit will not register, so I'm going to use a medium here and the counter stays the same. So that's just a general piece of knowledge you should be aware of when fighting high evolutionary. Next we have Zola. On equal ranks, things can get a little finicky. Punching down is way easier, but all the defenders in this showcase are at a rank 4 anyhow. Since Cassandra doesn't need to parry for one of her heavy openings, she can knock down Zola that way. Additionally, you can do this special 1 trick to dash in and land another heavy opening in that manner. Now, Cassandra's damage is pretty decent with just Neuroshocks, and since Zola makes your actual special hits do nothing, Cassandra doesn't do half bad. There I did get lucky with the root, but sometimes that's all you need in Battlegrounds. It's just a bit of luck. And now to end things off, we have Serpent. Here we utilize the fact that they can't throw specials while rooted and during your special animation. And also here, after you do your full passive stun, you want to parry and then heavy. That way you'd knock him back further before next world wall kicks in. And using the fear, you don't have to dash back, as Serpent won't go unblockable. There you get a little lucky getting saved from being clipped by the heavy, but otherwise, this matchup can potentially work in metas where Cassandra isn't boosted, but of course, when she is, it's a lot more comfortable to pull off. And this fight will conclude it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll be out with more showcases hopefully, where I get to show off my favorite champs. Thank you.